From the St. Francis Yacht Club in San Francisco, this is the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, hosted by Ron Young.
Welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, live from the virtual grill room of the St. Francis Yacht Club. We hope that you and yours are safe, sheltering in place in a comfortable environment, and we look forward to greeting you back at the Yacht Club just as soon as conditions permit. And when you do get back to the Yacht Club, you'll enjoy, like I have for years, the opportunity to look out our window and see great young sailors practicing on the San Francisco city front. This next year especially, you'll get to see our two guests because they'll be practicing for the 2024 quad. They are Lucy Wilmott, who at age 8 started sailing O'Day Sprites back in Chatham, Massachusetts. She graduated then into the Opties for Encinal Yacht Club and then the Opties for San Francisco Yacht Club, and began sailing 49ers with her Miramonte High School team, again under the purview of San Francisco Yacht Club. She, at 16, and her younger sister, Sally, at 13, won the Ida Lewis Championship, which is a cool thing. And then in 2015, she won the 29er North Americans, and in 2016, took 5th in the 29er Youth Champs and was the highest scoring female team in the 29er Youth Champs. She then jumped to the 49er FX and a year ago began sailing with her partner, Erika Reineke. Erika began sailing Opties out of Fort Lauderdale. At first, she says she hated sailing until her friends started getting really good, and then she got into it. So good, in fact, that at age 13, she won the Girls National Championship. She repeated at age 14, and by age 14, she also was third in the Co-Ed National Championships. She jumped to the Laser Radial and got coached by Anna Tunnicliffe. Erika would then go on to win 2 ILCA Youth World Championships, and in 2017 was named Rolex Yachtswoman of the Year. She was a 4-time collegiate All-American while sailing for Boston College and a 4-time national champion in the Laser Radial while sailing for Boston College. So Lucy and Erika have teamed up for the 2024 quad. And in the evolution of racing sailboats, we've all watched as the tools have been refined. What's especially exciting about the work that Lucy and Eric are doing is their integration of new metrics and sailing tools in their practice and in their performance. With that illustrious beginning, we welcome both of you, Lucy and Eric, to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, my name is Lucy. I am from Orinda, California, and I grew up sailing Opties internationally, and I competed in the 420 and the 29er with my sister. I started sailing the FX, which is a double-handed women's skiff in the Olympics, in 2018, and I graduated college in 2020. So Eric and I recently got together right when I had graduated, and that was also the start of the pandemic.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erika Reineke, and I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I also started in the Optimist and moved my way up into the Radial after that, and did 2 Olympic campaigns in the Radial and came up short both times. And now I'm moving and transitioning into the 49er FX. And Lucy and I actually became teammates, like she said, at the beginning of the pandemic. I got a phone call right after losing the Olympic trials for 2020. And it was about 2 weeks after, and Lucy called me up and was like, "Hey, do you want to go sailing?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go for it." So that's kind of where the whole team started. We'd love to just share, about our campaign here and kind of what the focal points surrounding our team are. As you can see on the slide, lifting our wings to achieve the American dream. That's the central slogan of our campaign. There's no denying that the U.S. was most dominant in bringing home Olympic medals in the 80s and 90s. And that being said, our team is very hungry to bring back American sailing excellence, starting with Olympic gold at the 2024 Games. So exactly 1 year ago, we built a business plan, a team business plan that was going to highlight the next 4 years and things that we really wanted to focus on and that were important to us for our campaign. These bullet points are near and dear to our hearts. We've created a campaign design that maps out our 4-year strategy and our training plan. Later on in the slide deck, we'll get to that and elaborate on that a bit more. It's really important for our team to constantly be on the forefront of change. Sailing's always evolving, and we want to take the charge on that and be involved in making sailing more elite, making it more competitive, specifically in advancing data-driven training methods, which again, we'll dive into later on the slide deck. We realize that we cannot sail this boat or any Olympic class without maintaining high physical fitness levels. So that's one thing that we're also currently working on to the best of our abilities. And the other thing is that we want from this campaign is to have a strong support team. It's a 2-person boat, but there's a lot more people that go into making a campaign successful. Fundraising effectively for our dream in past campaigns, fundraising has been one of the hardest parts. As a result, we have made it a goal to make sure that fundraising is never a limiting factor, and we're able to go out and compete and achieve the results that we want by getting the correct amount of funds for the boat that we're sailing. And the last thing is catalyzing a generational legacy in the US. We want the US to be successful for years to come at the Olympic Games, international events. And so that's one thing that we're really pushing for the future of the US. Great. This is a bit of our campaign design. In year 1, we were hit with the pandemic. We joined again just a year ago. However, the focus of our year 1 training was boat speed and boat handling. Because those were the 2 objectives, we were able to really get a ton of days on the water training domestically. We trained in Miami, in Fort Lauderdale, Marina del Rey, San Francisco, and we've just been putting in a ton of hours nailing tacks and jives. At this point, I don't know how many tacks we've done together, but we could probably calculate it. It's in the thousands at this point. Despite COVID, we've been able to use some of the technology to really help us build up our boat handling and our speed efforts. In year 2 and year 3, we really want to refine our potential and go out internationally and go abroad and compete, having already built a really good boat handling and speed base. And so in year 2, we're looking to get racing experience, sail a ton of different events, and kind of just get ourselves on the map and see or start to kind of pick away at tactics and strategy. And in year 3, that's really when we're putting an emphasis on results. We want to be winning, and we want to be on the podium at year 3 the entire time, having had such a great base in year 1 and learning in year 2, then really learning how to win in year 3. And by year 4, our goal is to have qualified for the Olympic Games as the US representative in the 49er FX and come home with a gold medal.
So I've got a few questions about your great chart. When you talk about equipment development, talk a little bit about equipment development. Give me an example of what you can do with equipment on a one design boat in the 49er FX.
So there's been a huge push to really standardize the sails, standardize the kites. They're redesigning them right now for the 2024 quad, and they're eliminating any little factory discrepancies that, in mast thickness and stiffness, in sail tack length, and there are tiny millimeter differences. Those are going to be largely eliminated. But when we talk about that, it's really bend testing, testing mass, testing blades, and knowing, what we can do with the rig and how we will interact with those. As with our technique, Erika does the main sheet, I'm on the tiller. And so really understanding, I think the sails and all the different conditions, and really having a good recording of all those, so that we know what we're looking for when we go to a venue and need a specific sail shape.
But if all the teams are using the same gear, how does your awareness of the development and refinement of the equipment year and year benefit you?
That's a great question. Well, I've been sailing a one design boat, the Laser Radial, for a very long time. And I can tell you that even though it is one design, there's little subtleties that'll make, inches boat lengths over the course of an entire race. And so in the 49er FX, I think the tuning of the rig, we have turnbuckles now. Didn't know what that was a couple of years ago. So really just trying to get into the nitty gritty of learning, what ratio of turnbuckles that we need, again, in certain conditions for especially our weight. We're training with teenage boys, which our male partners, I should say. We're training with them, and they're at a significantly heavier weight than us. So like the boat is set up differently, and so we need to be able to tune the boat correctly for our weight. And even though it's one design, there's a different sail profile we might need for our weight than other teams.
I think also too, like using technology, we want to know what rabbit holes we should go down when it comes to like sail tuning or blade testing or mast bending, and like what rabbit holes are not worthwhile. So I think equipment development would be just like kind of checking off the boxes and understanding, okay, the foils are really, we've sampled them. There aren't really any large discrepancies. That's not worth investigating. Let's move on to masts, and then making sure that there are no discrepancies, just so we can know that like we don't need to focus on that too much.
What choices do you have in foils? In other words, it's not only one foil. You have multiple choices to select from.
There's only one foil that we can purchase, but there may be different stiffnesses that we need to investigate. So we would bend test probably for that. This data collection that we're referring to, it really started about 2 years ago when I was training with Paris, Hankin, and Anna Tunnicliffe when they were doing their campaign for the 2020 Olympics. We trained under Willie McBride, but we really started building this data infrastructure back in 2018, well before Eric and I had sailed. So one of the things I think, people traditionally approach improvement is they would go to a regatta, they would see how they do, pick a few things they need to work on, and then, practice those things. Maybe 2 months later, go back to a regatta and revisit, make sure that those problems are fixed, and figure out what else you need to work on. However, at times I think that can be random. It can be super dependent on the regatta conditions. And this boat, it sails so differently across the wind ranges as well as the wave states that, we don't want improvement to be like somewhat cyclical. We want to make sure we're improving consistently and in as accelerated of a fashion as possible. And so, with the data, one part that was really particularly helpful for me and Erica is that we developed a baseline, which is pretty much a benchmark of skills that would bring us up to speed with the generation of teams that came before us. So when Erica and I started sailing, we could figure out like how are we really comparing to the FXs of the previous quad. To figure that out, we use, whenever we practice, we use a true sail device, which is a GPS tracking device, as well as it has other things like you can see on the screen, pitch and heel. But, with our coach taking videos from the coach boat, we're looking at the GPS tracks, and we have GoPros running in our boat. We really get like a full picture of, for example, this acceleration really looks like, and how effective were our rocks, for example, or how effective were our, when did we flatten, and how did that kind of pan out? But so, we use the true sails, but we also use multiple devices to kind of bring it together. And this is really great for the two boat testing that we spent a lot of time with that team working with. But, we could learn their lessons, we could put data to it, and we were able to move forward with understanding where we needed to be. And so the cool thing is that, during the pandemic, we have thus far not been able to compete internationally, though we have been able to collect regatta data and measure improvement against the international level. And so while we're doing all this training for a given set of conditions, so for example, like 12 knots in flat water, we can actually compare our tacks and jibes for that day to those of the international level. And this really helps us understand, are our tacks actually good for that wind range? And, what skills are most important for us to work on within that wind range? And when we do nail it, we can empirically know, and we can move on to the next thing.
On the table, it shows capped, not capped. What is the difference between those two?
Well, one was like more of a higher standard than the other one. I think the not capped was higher, and the cap basically took into account the better tacks that people have versus like, out of 10 tacks, there's one kind of not so great one. So that's kind of the difference there.
Ideal loss, is that measured in knots?
No, that's meters.
Meters. So how much you lost? 1.2 meters of distance.
Yeah. And so while this boat is really fast, I think you can really break down like a lot of the racing to like, good start, straight line speed, and these boat handling maneuvers. And, it's all crosses and ducks are a game of feet and inches. And so we really want to make sure we're taking care of these details. This is comparing our maneuvers to international teams, and for confidentiality's sake, we made sure that none of the teams were shared. However, we also like look at what we're doing inside the boat. So for example, this is a video of me and Erica training in Miami. And this was, I think, for us, a particularly good tack where we have a really nice pull up, our weights really together, and we were really happy with the entry and exit speed. And you can see with the roll, like there's a really nice consistent angle of heel going through it. And so, when we find these video clips, we really like to see, we really like to watch them again and watch us doing the good maneuvers. And when we have bad maneuvers, we like to delve into, why those didn't go well. But being able to see these other metrics, like, how was the bow bobbing through the tack? How far forward was the bow getting? It really helps us have an accelerated learning curve that will just be faster than traditional teams who would use the model of going to just regattas. And this data also allows us to help us focus our energy. Like we said, Eric and I have 4 years where we're sailing together. While a lot of the work has started before this quad, we really have limited time and we have limited coaching resources. And so when we weren't with our coach too all the time, being able to send him videos and get feedback so we can take away like 3 tangible things each day to work on, it really helps us learn faster. Here is an example of, this is the raw GPS data taken from our tracks. However, we are currently training with a male team, and this team is significantly larger than we are. And so this
put nicely.
So this track was actually taken just last month when we were training in Marina Del Rey in mostly side force conditions. But this is an example of one of the reports that would be presented by our coach. In this report, we're looking at rate of turn in the entry and seeing like how fast of an entry you have, how does that affect our exit speed and how long it takes for us to build speed again. I think the cool thing too is though they're a totally different combined weight than we are. And so we can also understand the overall performance of the FX. And like, we're really trying to figure out like, what are the fastest tacks in these conditions, or how can we push the boats? And I think we've been surprised at seeing how the different weights really need to use different techniques, and being able to see video and the tracks of both of us really helps us, at least for Eric and I, like narrow down the priorities and what we need to do with our bodies to achieve, like a good fly-in, for example.
So this is an example of our team's tuning log. It's basically like a Google, I want to call it a quiz, but it's a questionnaire that our coach and us put together. And so each day after sailing, we log, I guess it's more my responsibility. I log the tensions of the primaries, the caps. We take pre-bend together. We make sure that we log where the jib cars were at, what the centerboard height was, the out haul, all these kind of little details, and we log it into this sheet. And I will tell you, we've only been sailing for a year together, but the data that we have is immense in all these different venues that we've already sailed. So it's only been a year, and we do have a lot of these data points, which has been really helpful for us when we go back to a venue. All this being said, we're, racing and like executing performance on the water is the most important. So it's really easy to get caught up in all these numbers, but the numbers for our team are more just of a reference. When the boat's going really well, we want to just take note of that and make sure that we log that and why it feels good, why it doesn't feel good. What are the priorities to fixing it? Is it, turns off on the primaries, turns on the lowers, things like that. So, sorry, I reversed those. It'd be turns, see, I'm still a laser sailor. It would be turns off on the lowers and turns on the primaries. But anyway, that's just kind of what we're looking for there. We want to make sure that when things are going well, we're able to really understand why, and when things aren't going well, how, is it just an outhaul change? Is it just a centerboard change, or are we adjusting the whole rig? This right here is an example of one of our tracks. This is out of Marina Del Rey. So this is more recent, but there are 2 tracks here, one with our training partners and the other one is us. So as you can see, we're the purple and our training partner is the pink. And what's really cool here is that through these tracks, we're able to analyze boat speed. COG is course over ground, and DOG is distance over ground. Sorry, I can't help but smile because dog. Anyway, so these are things that we're constantly analyzing when we track our training sessions. And what's really cool, as Lucy was just going to explain, is that when things are going well, or we adjust the rig, let's say we go out with a certain rig tension and we want to see if something will work better, we tell our coach, hey, we're going to change the rig, like mark the time of day, time stamp it. And so we're able to see directly, like, okay, we changed the rig at this time. How is the boat responsive compared to the original setup that we have? Or how is it responding compared to the original setup we had?
Especially when we're tired at the end of the day, we're like, oh, we don't remember what setting we were at lineup 2. And our coach is like, oh, you had this. And then we can watch the video. And so it puts us in the frame of mind for what we should be looking at. And we can remember kind of how the boat was sailing.
And so this here is one of the logs that we have as a steering standard deviation. And so this is a quick little excerpt of a downwind run that we did together, our training partners and us. And so basically what we're looking at here is that, put simply, Lucy has a higher standard deviation of course over ground, which means that she's steering more. And Lucy has a lower standard deviation of speed, which means her speed is up more. And so looking at the track, we were able to conclude that because of the steering more in this given sea state, we were able to create more boat speed, which was creating more apparent wind, which was allowing us to drive the boat lower and faster. And lower and faster on a downwind is music to any sailor's ears with a kite. So that's one of the things we were looking at here. And just having little excerpts like this, when, again, things are going well, we're able to know why compared to our training partner's technique. So it was really helpful to have this.
So Lucy, when you say steering more, are you steering in waves as you go up and down the wave? Talk about steering more.
There's like how often you're steering, as well as like how many degrees you're going of travel you're going through. And I think on this one, we were steering more frequently, and we probably had similar degrees of travel, but I was doing it more often. So that's something, especially on the upwind, when you get into heavy overpowered conditions, it goes from Erika being really active on the main sheet to the skipper having to take more initiative with keeping up with this power and speed through tiller movements. And so, knowing, both can be actually tuned pretty similarly and then have very different like helming styles. And so to delve into that and be able to know what we're actually doing is really important.
This is just a cool picture of us tacking.
In a tack, how many steps across the boat for the skipper? How many steps across for the crew? And then in a jibe, same question.
It's a great question. Too many.
It's like, it's a cheater, middle, shuffle, and then hit the wind.
Was that 5? How many steps is that?
1, 2,
or 5.
3, 4. Yeah, 5.
If you're good, you cut out the cheater. If you're
Yeah. When back in the days when I coached Silvestri for the '84 trials in LA, we would video he and different other training partners, and steps across the cockpit was one of the incredibly cool ways for us to keep track of how smooth and fast and efficient a sailor could be getting across the boat.
Love that. It's light feet or everything, and quickness, which is something I wasn't too good at, hopping in the boat for the first time.
Part of why you're doing this. Hey.
I know my learning curve is just accelerating. So from a single day of training, we're able to pull these different sections and really analyze them. And now, like, again, having all this data is great, and we want to make sure that we're utilizing it in the right way. And so right now it's been really helpful for the boat handling maneuvers, seeing the meters lost through each tack and jibe, and then also for the speed differences as we saw on the downwind. Later in the quad, when we're not focusing too much on boat handling stuff like we've been drilling over and over, we'll move more into the tactics and strategy part of our campaign and our campaign design. So with that, we plan on using this data to look at tactics more and look at strategy when other boats are around. And that's basically where we're moving with the data after year 1.
Are you changing jib leads right after attack at all? When are you changing jib leads?
Prior to the race, we change the leads.
You're generally not changing them while you're sailing along when you're racing. You do so as the wind changes. How often are you changing jib leads?
Every race we would probably change it. We can't really change it on a leg because, as you see, the jib is on a self-tacking track right there. And we like to, if we want to change the angle of attack, we put the pins farther out, as well as it gets windier, we can move. We can move the jib down lower on the jib, the forestay that it's on, as well as tension the jib up a bit more. So we could do like jib tension changes, right before the start, and as well as the jib pins, but like the tack tie is pretty set and we would have to reset after a single race.
If we're fully trapped, we can't change from car 4 to car 5.
Yeah, we have to like run across the boat and hike with all of our weight.
Yeah, right. So you're not changing halyard tension during the race. I guess that's the second question.
No.
And you're right. Just getting under the boom and across and hooked on again is a big deal.
Oh yeah, this boat's out of control.
So describe for a moment for our guests, you're now hiked out. Here you are, starboard tack. You guys are almost totally horizontal. Look at that, amazingly impressive. And then at some point in the presentation, talk to us a little bit about how you get your body away from being fully horizontal and you get across the cockpit and get that same position on the other side. Because ladies and gentlemen in the audience recognize that they're both on a hook, a trapeze off of the mast, and they've got to disconnect on the starboard side to get that same position achieved out on the port side. Let me just tell you, the acrobatics of that is incredible to watch, and of course, totally amazing to be able to do. So we want you to give us a little description of attacking the life of the helmsman, attacking the life of the crew.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because actually, like, it looks, really hard dangling over the edge, but that is the most stable position for us. We're super anchored in our feet. We're both holding sheets that like really pin us to the rail. And we both have, I have the tiller and I can feel the helm, and she has the main, which is really responsive. And so we both have responsive things in our hand that are telling us, what the boat is feeling. But so at least for a skipper in attack, I'll call, stay ready to tack, and tacking in 3, 2, 1. Erika's doing her cleanup probably while that's happening. And I'm looking for a wave and a nice flat opportunity to start the entry. And my focus in the beginning of attack is making sure that our bodies are like coming up at the right time and I'm turning under our weight at the right time. But it's a lot of like tricep and bicep pulling, and you do a really explosive pull up with your front hand. And then it's, a lot of quad and core strength to run across the boat, but keep the boat turning underneath our feet, and then make sure we're not losing balance and we're able to, I'm actually looking forward and making sure that I'm watching the telltales and I'm watching the jib so that when it catches, I'm on the right exit angle and I know we're like pressing into the boat as much as possible. And the goal is to get the boat up to speed. So on the exit of the tack, I just run and I extend fully and I don't clip myself in. I like keep sailing the boat and then I clip myself in.
And you're turning, in a case where you're going from starboard tack in this picture to port tack, you're going to turn essentially clockwise. So you're always facing forward in the turn with your body?
Yeah, both of them. I always I try and rotate my shoulders forwards.
So that you stay eyes forward is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
The boat, when it's going fast though, there's a sensation of like it coming onto you rather than like you running through the boat. It's all more under our feet than it looks.
And as well, our audience might want to know, they have to keep their weight together. That is to say, they transit across the boat together so that their effect is optimized versus one of them, heeling the boat to port and the other one heeling the boat to starboard, as would be the case if they weren't coordinated in their motion across the boat. I got that right?
Yeah.
Amazing. And you guys, let's just stop for a moment while we got this picture. Give us the specs on the boat. How long is an FX? How much does it weigh? How tall is the rig?
Oh, goodness.
4.9 meters.
I'm not sure of the exact dimensions, to be honest.
It's about 17 feet long. The boat weighs 180 pounds and the mast is,
I don't know.
24?
Poor Erica's on her head.
Oh,
A lot of stuff is done by like our hands and our height.
way taller than both of you.
Beyond 3 steps, Lucy steps or whatever.
So moving into like the racing and training and
So you guys are sailing 5 days a week, 15 to 20 days a month, you're saying?
Yeah.
And you're training in a particular environment. Now, what would you consider the sea state in the picture that we're looking at right there?
That's pretty
How would you describe that?
well, actually, that was in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
So we did have some swell here. It looks flat, but it's only because the period of the swell is so big. So, this is when we were training out in Santa Barbara last summer. It was a very interesting technique because, again, the period was so big. There were moments where we were gaining a ton of apparent coming up the face of the wave and then losing a ton at the bottom. So it was really important to make sure that we were steering to an average telltale flow rather than trying to chase the apparent all over the wave.
Right. Talk to us about changing the main as you go up the wave and your apparent is slowing, and down the wave as the apparent is speeding up. What do you do with the main?
Well, whenever the apparent's picking up, it means the wind's going forward. So we want to trim in the main. And whenever the apparent is decreasing, the wind is shifting back. And more, an extreme example would be like 90 degrees to the boat. So you're looking to ease the sail.
Lucy, same question for steering up the wave and down the wave. As you're slowing, going up the wave and speeding as you go down the wave.
Well, so that's actually a little bit of a bigger question mark, but like my steering interacts with Erica's main sheet trim. And so I don't want to be, if the wind's building up the face of a wave, and we know it's going to crash, I probably don't want to steer too high up chasing it and then fall on the backside of the wave. So I have to resist kind of the turning up of the boat. And yeah, like she said, take an average angle. But ideally, if we're managing our flow really well, I'm heading up as she's steering in and I'm heading down as she's easing, rather than us kind of negating each other a bit.
So I was saying the interesting thing, especially in that big of a swell, is the main focus of the two of us is making sure that we have really basically a stable angle of heel of the boat. We do not want the boat washing around from under us. If there's too much leeward heel, the boat's too loaded up, and then Lucy's going to have to be forced to steer high. And if there's too much windward heel or the boat's too flat, again, she's going to be pulling the tiller to windward to try to power it up. And so that's kind of where, we start with what is the proper angle of heel that we want to sail to, and then all the rest kind of all just goes around that, our body weight, the sail trim, and the steering.
And it's a little bit of a dance, especially, if we're on the higher end, is Erica going to trim in the main and keep going high, or are we eventually going to heel to windward and I'm going to pull the tiller to save us and head the boat down and power it up a bit? There's a little bit of a dance between the two of us on the edges of being too high or too low. And that's where communication between us and consensus between us is probably the most important. And kind of piggybacking off of this being in Santa Barbara, I think one of the final things that, this data has allowed us to do is make macro decisions about our campaign. So for example, this winter we were sailing in Miami, and from a metric standpoint, our tacks were looking really good. And so, the data told us you guys are reaching a pretty high percentage of efficiency here. So we were able to make the decision, okay, let's move to Fort Lauderdale, where we get a variety of waves and sea states and wind conditions. And, it's obviously only an hour north from Miami, but it gave us a much more challenging wave state where we could practice those tacks in a similar wind, but however, much more challenging wave state. And so, this data allows us to really know when we need to work on things, when we're good and we can challenge and push those boundaries of what we're doing a little bit. But, it's really, we try and be process oriented rather than results focused when we approach this. And these big picture metrics also, I think, allow us to periodize our training so that, we can race at the right times. We don't want to be going to Europe just for the sake of racing. We want to race at the front of the fleet and know how to do that. And so we want to practice top level boat handling maneuvers, not just average ones.
Talk about periodization. Give our viewers an example of what that means, periodization.
So there's like a lot of talk about, like how many days you should sail and how much you should do leading up to events and what your campaign should look like on a long-term basis. We really want to avoid, it's not an uphill sprint. It's really for us an endurance race. And that's why I think we wanted to start so early and start chipping away at getting quality days like really early on.
So like one thing I think that's really cool about the way we're approaching training, again, like I've campaigned for a while now, and this approach is a bit different. We're training 5 days a week, 15 to 20 days a month on the water. And the reasoning behind that is that we're not doing, 15 to 20 days back to back to back to back. These days are spread over the course of a month. In the 2 previous campaigns that I did, our training camps were, anywhere from 8 to 12 days long, and every day was back to back to back. So at the end of the 12th day, I'm done. I'm completely drained. I'm wiped out, and I'm using the rest of the month to recover. But this schedule is like the setup that we have is 2 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off. And it's more sustainable. It's more sustainable because we're able to work on just our training on the water more efficiently with these like smaller little chunks these smaller little like bites rather than just doing like, okay, we're going to do 14 days. You guys are going to be wiped. Then we'll see you next month. So this is why I think that our training plan is very unique. The other training plan that I've just grown up doing since I was like 15, it hasn't really made me a better sailor. And so I think making sailing more like a 5 days a week kind of thing is more beneficial to the program and actually getting or chipping away at things day to day.
And talking about not moving like locations, setting up the boat, setting up our coach boat, setting up all this technology takes time. And so we've really been careful to make sure that we choose venues where like we know what the wind, generally speaking, is doing during that period. And we can like build upon days of training. So for example, in San Francisco, when it's windy every day, we can practice like, the barrowway needed to be a little bit flatter, or the entries of our jives just a hair slower, but it needed to keep smoothly turning. And the next day we can practice the exact same things and really check off little issues that we want to remove really quickly. Whereas if it's 5 knots one day and then it's 12 knots the other day and then like 5 knots again, you're not really, you're practicing these days like in isolation, and you're not really building upon these days.
So moving into some strength and conditioning stuff, just as we want to be constantly chipping away at our sailing goals throughout the month and avoid doing, again, like 2 weeks of gym, 2 weeks of sailing, we want to keep the gym going as we're doing our sailing. And so these are a few pictures of us out at the gym that we worked at in Florida. We worked out there from, I want to say, September to March or April. And that.
Wait, in the upper left picture there, who's in the foreground? Whose bicep is that in the foreground?
I guess you could go from front to back. It's me,
Lucy,
Erica, Anna, Steph.
And then our training partner, Marco.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Wait. So in foreground, upper left, this is Lucy. Then we go Erica left, right? Lucy's at the close right. Then Erica. Then 2 other training partners behind you guys.
Yep, that's the two 2021 Olympic Games representatives, Anna Weiss for the NAFRA, and then Steph Robel for the FX.
All right, great. So Lucy's showing a little bit of bicep there.
Woo! Yes, she's looking great.
The curls have been really working on her. We can see that for sure. That's great. Okay, good.
Yeah,
it's
progress, I think, to build strength, and like we don't just want to get good at sailing and then but be super weak in the whole process and then have to take off a ton of time to build strength. And also, weightlifting, like it takes time to build that muscle. And so we strongly think that we need to like sprinkle it in every single day with the training. And I'd say generally, like, we want to be as tired as like a heavy wind day would do to us every day. So if it's light wind and, the conditions aren't super challenging, we're probably going to throw in more tacks and jibes to make us more tired, and or like a heavier lifting session.
So give us some metrics around your weight training. What kind of weights are you lifting?
So
How many reps?
it's different for both of us, and it actually depends on I think where we are in our training. So for example, recently I've been trying to build my strength back up, and so I've been doing heavier weights, less reps. However, like probably I'll start next month, start moving into more of a endurance phase and go more reps, a little bit less weight. And so we're basically always just trying to measure volume, and make sure that we're hitting correct reps, especially so it complements.
So give me an example. How many pounds, how many reps? Give me an example in a session.
Well, so, I mean, I just hit my back squat PR, which is 135. So almost my body weight. And I did like 6 sets of 3.
You're benching your weight, you're saying?
I'm squatting my weight. And then, I mean, we don't actually do benching that often. We like to do pull-ups more and single arm, like bench presses.
Yeah, for the trap wires. Yeah.
Oh, right.
So that's another, really important thing is that the trainers in this gym and the trainers that we love to work with are trainers who can make the workouts and our strength sessions complement things that we do in the boat. So as you can see in the middle photo, I'm kind of doing like a row, a body weight row, and that really replicates, pulling in the main sheet or pulling up on the trap. Trimming the spinnaker is the same movement. So we're not just in there like trying to be meatheads and lift a bunch of random weights and do random exercises. We want exercises to mimic the boat.
Right. So here's actually a video of us getting into agility, which
something I sat in a boat for 11 years of my life in the radial, and now I'm on my feet. So we really had to work on getting my feet personally really quick and fast through the boat so I could make it to the other side. In the laser, there's like 1 hop, and now there's 5 steps. So we're really working on making the feet quick, kind of like a soccer player.
And it really pays off. We were honestly surprised that, like, when we did all these linebacker drills, our ability to like consistently place our feet in the boat where we wanted to greatly improved, and it cleaned up a lot of our issues. And so, I use a Whoop, Erika uses a Garmin, but we also love analytics when it comes to health and fitness. For the Whoop, for example, on the far left-hand side, if I wake up in the morning, the first thing I'm going to do is I'll check my sleep and see how good of sleep I got. But it really shows it shows how strenuous all the activities are doing and kind of how it's amassing through the day and what type of strain it's putting on you at the end of the day. And it uses 24/7 like heart rate monitor tracking to come up with these analytics. But this understanding, how should our weight training and cardio sessions revolve around our sailing, and how fatigued are we actually? What does our recovery look like? Is our heart really healthy? And are we getting the sleep we say we think we are? It's a great way to hold us accountable. And also from the weight gain perspective, it helps us also plan our nutrition. So, like Eric and I said, we love watching videos in the evening. And so every day kind of post sailing, we tend to come back. One of us will get the computer and the TV going, and the other person will start making food. But, I think both of us have really taken nutrition on together. And that includes, meal prepping on Sundays, grocery shopping together, and having consensus about our 2 schedules so that our eating is consistent and we're able to get what we need. But this is, I think, kind of couch time after sailing is where all the good ideas for tomorrow or the next day happen. And
so I got to ask, what do you watch in couch time? What's on the tube?
My goodness, we had a bachelor and bachelorette marathon. We were so excited for was it Monday nights? Yeah.
It came out
Tuesdays.
It was
Tuesdays.
Monday, but we didn't have cable, so we had to watch it on Tuesday.
We do not have cable. We have to stream like a week late.
So if supporters want to help you buy cable, they send their checks to give us that part now.
Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, so our campaign name is Wilmot Reineke FX. It's the handle for all of our social media. And we make a really concerted effort to constantly update our website. We write monthly newsletters, and, we just want to share our stories and our experiences because, like we said, at the end of the day, we really want to catalyze a generational legacy.
Yes, and these are a few pictures of people we've worked with or people who have come out on the coach boat. In the top left-hand corner, it's Daniela Moroz came out with us one day in Miami, and we were so thrilled to have her. I was pretty much hyping up the FX, and there was no wind. So I was so heartbroken. I was like, here we have this sick girl who wants to come out and shred. And I was like, let's go. And it was bust. But
she's been going 50 knots on foils, and you show her no wind in your FX.
I was so embarrassed, actually. But then in the bottom left-hand corner, we just did a sailing camp with the Gold Star Sailing Foundation in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And this was a really cool opportunity for us. The camp really brings this kind of community around people and kids who have lost a family member in battle and fighting for our country. So we had the honor to work with these kids, teach them how to sail, and really just have fun from the whole experience. And then, the other two pictures, we have the Laser Radial star right now in the youth fleet, Chapman Peterson, looking forward to, I think he just won the Nationals, and we're looking forward to seeing him and the whole team sail incredibly at the Youth Worlds this summer. And in the bottom right, we have the Los Angeles Goon Laser Squad as well. So, and Lucy's been working a ton with the Opti programs and the 420 kids. And so we love working with them. They inspire us just as much as we try to inspire them. And what's interesting with kids' minds is that they're always coming up with creative things. So sometimes I'll just overhear during a debrief, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm like, that doesn't sound crazy. That sounds like a really good idea.
Give me an example of something you've heard in a debrief like that.
I would say we talked about centerboard. Well, this was a while ago, but we talked about pulling the centerboard up pretty high on the downwind and swell. So whenever you're surfing a wave in a laser, just reducing drag through the water. And if you're catching the wave anyway, might as well just throw the centerboard up and see how it goes. So we actually did that a bunch of times. We got a little too aggressive with it. Some of the centerboards came flying out of the boat, but hey, the idea was there. I respect it. So
Cool.
And we hope there's a lot of question marks with the FX and what the new rig is going to look like and what is tuning and technique. And already we've seen through the, from 2016 until now, technique has changed and evolved in the women's fleet. And so, we hope that we can record all of this and pass it on to the next generation so that when they're starting their campaign, they have a better sense of what to do and how they should go about, doing it and learning.
So tell people, what is the venue that you expect to see at the 24 games? Describe the games.
So I actually did the U23 Worlds in Marseille, and
they did really well.
And the first day it was 17 knots, glam conditions, and then a Mistral came in, and the chop and swell was something unlike I had ever seen. And so, I had been sailing in the bay where there was it's just windy all the time, and there's short, cheap, steep chop. But I was really surprised that it was wider and taller, and we actually had trouble we were pitch pulling and we had trouble completing some jives. And so that's partially why, we went to Fort Lauderdale to get some of the big wave experience. And so we're excited that we're bi-coastal, and Like I was used to the short chop and heavy air, and Erica, when I went to Fort Lauderdale, I'm like, whoa, these waves are big, and she's like, yeah, keep surfing. And so really has been really good with waves, and has helped me like develop my driving a bit better through a ton of different wave states.
So just to be clear, where will the venue be in the 24 Olympic Games?
So the Olympics are hosted. Paris is the hosting city. However, the sailing venue will actually be in Marseille, which is about like a 2.5 to 3 hour train ride south of the city, and it's on the Mediterranean. So it's a pretty like open ocean venue.
And what wind speed are you guys planning for? I know you can't predict, but you must have a model in your head.
Everything.
Yeah, after having spent like spending time in each condition during that one world championship,
Right.
we need to be good at light wind, medium wind, heavy wind, and every single wave state that you can think of.
And what's the range from what breeze to what breeze?
From like 4 knots to 24 to 25.
Wow. So virtually, like you're saying, everything. So what sea state can you plan in Marseille for the 24 games?
I think both like flat with a little bit of gentle swell to when we saw the Mistral, the swell and chop really picked up. So everything in between.
So I know this is way ahead, but what other teams do you think are going to be good? What countries?
Probably France.
Probably France, England, New Zealand, Australia.
I mean, honestly, it'll really decide it'll really depend on who continues after this games. And there's a lot of new teams coming up that we've actually reached out to about training opportunities. So it's really just going to depend on who continues and who's willing to put the hours in, I think.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting with the new sail setup. Like, I don't know if that will be an equalizer, but we're all going to need to learn how to like tune this new setup.
What's optimal team weight do you want to be? What do you guys want to weigh together?
We're striving for probably 290. I think that's a pretty good baseline.
And a little bit more aft, did I hear you say earlier? You want the helms a little bit more so that you got weight to hold the boat down, fairways and so on. Is that the case, Lucy?
Yeah, right now I'm trying to gain as much like muscle mass and strength to help me in the boat as possible.
Mm-hmm. What's an annual budget for you guys in the first year, second year, third year, and so on?
So our annual budget is roughly $250,000 a year. That would include coaching, coach boat, training, like estimated regattas per year. And so within the first year, we didn't really spend that much because of COVID. However, the next couple years are going to be pretty sailing intensive. So that's what the campaign is going to cost. It's a big number, but there's other countries that are aware of this number as well, and so no team is sparing the expense. You'll see that most of the gold medals are won. Most of the gold medals that are won are teams that have the finances, and finances aren't a limiting factor.
How often between now and the games are you going to be buying sails? Give us your sail rotation schedule. I know it's more frequent as you go in the last year, but that's what I'm asking about.
Right now, I think we buy about we've used probably 3 mains, 4 or 5 jibs, 4 or 5 spinnakers. The mains, however, need to be repaired a lot more often than, even though the jibs wear faster because they're flogging, then there's a lot of issues with like the battens, and so we have to repair those more often. And so oddly enough, we need like a few main spares so that when something happens to one, we can take it to the shop and we don't lose days.
So who are you using for coaching at this point?
A bunch of different coaches, actually. We've been using William McBride. He was one of the first people to coach our team last year. And he was, has been exceptional with boat handling and like getting us up to speed with boat speed. And then also we've used Hans Henkin, who's a fellow US Sailing Team member. He really helped us with starting. We've used
Carlos Robles,
Eric Bowers,
and a ton of Cliff.
Paris Henkin came out. Dave Ullman we had for a day. So
Luther Carpenter.
I think like a lot of people would maybe say that, hey, that's too many opinions earlier on, but honestly, it's been great. We have been getting so much great feedback from each coach, and they're not afraid to say, hey, I'm not so good in this area, but I am really good in this area. And so when they say that and they give us that info, we make sure to ask a ton of questions about whether it's starting, looking at sail shape. Dave Ullman is, a legend at looking at sail shape. So
rig tension, etc.
Exactly. And so, yeah, furthermore, we want to keep bringing coaches in and especially utilizing the pro sailing scene a bit more. There's a lot of really good sailors who pro sail, and we believe that right now they're probably underutilized, and we want to bring them into our program and into a training camp.
So now, Lucy, what year did you graduate from Harvard, and what year did you, Erika, graduate from Boston College? And did you guys know each other when you were both in the same town?
Well, so I graduated Harvard this past spring in 2020. I actually, though, the last semester was only taking 2 classes and was training with Steph and Maggie down in Miami and like flying back and forth while taking my 2 classes on Wednesdays. That happened all before the pandemic hit. However, so I actually grew up, Sophia Reineke is the same like calendar year age as me. And so we did every single international Opti event together. And like Eric, when you're like 14, Erika was a lot older, and I just knew Erika as Sophia's older sister. I hadn't really spent that much time with Erika. And it wasn't really until we just started like going headfirst sailing together that we got to,
know each other,
build a friendship, and like, spend a lot of time together.
Great. And what year did you graduate BC, Erika?
I graduated in 2017. I took off. I was supposed to graduate in 2016, but I took off that year to campaign for the 2016 Olympics.
I narrowly missed her by she finished her spring semester, and then I started as a freshman at Harvard. We did not compete in college together,
sadly.
Yeah.
So now talk to us about, how does the team help you? That is to say, the U.S. Olympic sailing team. You're basically going to work for a berth in it. Once you get that berth, how do things change?
So that they've laid out a tiering system on the website. Right now, the focus is currently on the 2021 athletes who are competing at the games, which is rightfully so. They've been delayed just as much as we've been delayed for our quad. So we're really looking forward to seeing our fellow teammates go and compete at the games and like give it their all. I just cannot wait to watch them perform. I know they're going to. But as for the team, yeah, there's a whole tiering system. We don't know necessarily the benefits of the system at this time. We don't know the number for funding at this time that we will receive when we make the team. But we do know that the World Championships this year will be a marker for making it. So our goal is to make the team. Our goal is to perform at the Worlds and give it our all. So that's kind of what the summer layout is into the fall. We're going to train for that regatta like no one else.
So viewers who want to help Lucy Wilmot and Erika Reineke, you can go to www.wilmot.FX and support them. As you've seen, these are very thoughtful, intelligent, earnest, focused young people. And the best thing we can do to support them really is send them bucks these days. While they are getting expert advice from multiple quarters, and that's a savvy thing to be doing, each of us has the opportunity to be meaningful in helping them. And I look forward to all Wednesday Yachting Luncheon viewers taking part. In the past, we've supported sailors who went on to great heights. As those of you who have kept track know, that at the last Olympics, there were 15 sailors that went to Rio, 5 of whom were members of the St. Francis Yacht Club. In order for the St. Francis Yacht Club to be the premier yacht club in the world, we have to support our young Olympians and would-be Olympians. And that's who you've been listening to today. So Lucy and Erika, I couldn't be happier for you. And we're all impressed with your earnest, thoughtful, and intelligent approach to what is, in fact, pretty much the most complex sport we know of. Yes, basketball is pretty amazing. Football is incredible to watch. But and race cars go real fast. But to make a car go fast, you step on the gas. To make a sailboat go fast, you have to change the shape of the sail, the angle of the sail, the angle of the boat, the weight of the players. It's far, far more complex. In fact, it's trigonometry, physics, weather, all in real time. So it takes lots and lots of brains and physical skill. And in your case, teamwork, for heaven's sakes, to be moving across an incredibly delicate boat that can flip easily all the time. It takes incredible skill. So we're all impressed with your dedication and couldn't wish you more success. Thanks very much for being guests of the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
for
for
having
having us.
Absolutely. Good going, guys.
This has been a presentation of the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.